Thanks for staying with us on Point. The ABSA Purchasing Managers Index has declined to 56.2 index points in April from 57.4 in March. However, the index is now above 2.5 points. It's above the average recorded in the first quarter of this year and about 26 points above the April 2020 reading. All five subcomponents of the PMI were in positive terrain for the first time since early 2012. Even the subcomponent, most often trailing below the 50-point mark, has managed to increase to well above 50 in April. Business activity continues to increase in April, but at a slower pace compared to March. Analysts say it's too early to tell whether this points to a sustained improvement in job creation in the manufacturing sector, but it is said to be a positive development nonetheless.
PMI was still well above the 50-point neutrality mark that separates contraction and expansion. But there are probably three big takeaways from the underlying data. And the first is that we continue to see output expanding in the sector. And I think that's really important, especially on the back of what has been a really strong first quarter for the sector. So the continuing expansion that we're seeing in production, I think is quite significant. The second, I think also quite important, is that we're seeing manufacturers' own expectations for what the future could look like improve quite a bit. And that particular index that measures expected business conditions was up about 10 points in April alone. And I think this probably reflects some of the news that we're hearing, that the global economy is going to do a lot better this year. And I think my local manufacturers, at least some local manufacturers, are expecting that some of that will filter through into their operations as well. The third key takeaway, and this is not a particularly positive one, is that we're seeing continued strong growth in costs. The index measuring cost pressures, or the purchasing costs for manufacturers, did ease a little bit in April, but it's still at a level that is still quite high, and it does suggest that cost pressures at the manufacturing level are building in a particularly strong way. We've seen that, of course, in the PPI data for March, and I think this is something that we'll have to continue to pay attention to. But in general, so far, no strong evidence that those cost pressures are being passed on to the consumers. But in general, I think from perspective of underlying activity, it's another really strong PMI print that we have here.